Well, how's it going, Living Streams? It's good to have you guys here. I'm joined by someone I've missed in the podcast studio, Jeff Goki, a good friend and resident Phoenix One. What are you, director, president?
Founder, executive director.
Founder, executive director.
Yeah.
Which, if you guys don't know, it's been a while since we gave a little plug there, but Phoenix One, you guys are doing some really awesome stuff. A new website, that's right. Dalton was just telling us a second ago how
really
impressed he was about it.
Really happy.
But you guys are doing a lot of really cool stuff. Jeff, for those of you who don't know, Jeff goes to Living Streams. He's not a pastor at Living Streams, although he is a pastor at large,
at large.
and really a pastor of pastors.
Yeah.
And they're doing some really awesome ministry with Phoenix One, really caring for churches, keeping pastors in the trenches. And before I ask you for a little summary of Sunday, maybe actually, do you want to just while we're on the topic, tell you guys have had some exciting stuff going on. Fun to chat
it's been
about.
4.5 years, and I think in the last probably year and a half, we've gotten really clear on who we are, what we're doing. Specifically, probably in the last 8 months. So that's a part of the new website of just going like, we feel like we're clear on what we do, but a lot of other people weren't. But really specifically, we make church staff and their spouses healthier. So that's the goal is, and then kind of a tagline that would go with it is like healthy leadership equals healthy staff equals healthy congregation, healthy congregations move into the community and live out the Great Commission. Yeah. So it's really Jesus's model of just, he's healthy, he multiplies that health into the disciples then, this gets into Acts, but the disciples then go live out that health and teach and care and share amongst one another and disciple. And then as a result of that, the local church is born, and it goes into the Jerusalem, Judea, and the ends of the earth. And so that same model is really everything we do, of just going like, the dysfunctional things that happen in local churches are a byproduct of, we're so busy out there doing the work out there, but we're not really doing the work to care for ourselves. And we're kind of that safe, neutral place that says, how can we help? Church staff meet with us, and then we help them get the help they need. But then also church cultures that are really, really busy in trying to help make Sunday happen. And I don't think, if you've not worked for a local church, then you'll have no idea how when I say Sunday's coming, it's a significant undertaking every single week. And the needs that come along with a congregation that shows up every week, it's a lot. Yeah. And so in the midst of that, sometimes church cultures go a little sideways, and we care a lot for the people, which is important, but sometimes in the midst of doing that work, we forget to care for those who are doing the work. Yeah. And so it's helping local church organizations, churches, leadership to be able to create cultures that facilitate honesty, authenticity, and then, justice if it needs to be done, but justice in the right way, not the wrong way. Not just like, hey, kick you off the team. Like I always go like, what if Jesus treated the disciples like a lot of times churches treat employees? Yeah. Where it's like, hey, you didn't, you don't believe in our thing? Well, you're off the team. Well, all the disciples denied Jesus after 3.5 years with them. Yeah. And he was like, okay, now we're just getting started. Yeah. So I just think, how do we help local churches disciple and walk alongside of staff in the same way that Jesus did that with the disciples?
We've been talking about some of this stuff lately. I'm actually interested. It had not occurred to me, the connection. We did some, you guys brought us through your Lovewell app, this little app kind of assessing that was actually a really great idea of like, not just a one-time assessment, but like a once-a-week assessment for what was it, like
3 months?
3 months? 3 months?
3 months, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a quarter of data.
Just to kind of see where everybody was. It was really useful. But I don't know why it hadn't connected. We're actually working, I don't know if you know this, we've been working on some of this stuff internally as a staff over the summer and moving forward. Kind of the way we're phrasing it behind the scenes, really for the staff, is like we're trying to grow into living as the family of God, so that might be replicated outside, and recognizing that sometimes when we say family of God, it's more aspirational than descriptive of what actually is, Not that it's not descriptive. I think the church and Living Streams is family of God, but there's a big chunk of aspiration, and we'd like that to be more actual than aspirational, Yep. And so we've been doing some like It's weird over the summer because the summer is sparse,
Funky. Everybody's all over the place. Yeah.
But like we've been doing lunches, just saying, hey, noon to 1, we're going from about 12 to 12:40, just kind of eat lunch, hang out. 12:40, we're going to do the Examine together. Doing that Monday through Friday, but missing tons of days because sometimes it's like, people are working from home or whatever. And then we're doing some like spiritual formation stuff, practicing the way things.
Great.
In our Tuesday morning staff meetings, and just saying like, hey, every week let's just pick up a practice and let's practice that and let's talk about it. And low-key, the staff doesn't even fully know this yet, right? But like after a year or so, the thought will be like, okay, what of that do we want to keep and say this is how we do?
Yeah.
Not this is how we have to do, but this is what we think is helpful and fruitful.
It's good.
It's been really good doing
really
it over the summer.
I love you guys are doing the Examine together. Like it's just because those are those unifying things that help bring a team together. It's great.
What's really fun for those who don't know the Examine, right? It's just like a Jesuit prayer of kind of reflection, looking at the day, getting to some repentance. What was really fun is I had not considered how intimate it would be.
Oh yeah,
because I do the Examine every once in a while on my own. My wife and I do it, and that can be intimacy there, sharing that. But like when we're doing it with like 5 to a dozen or so people, staff members in a room after having lunch, it becomes like, we're sharing what were the joyful moments of the day, what were the areas where I failed. And the way we kind of do it is just each prompt it's like, hey, you can just kind of answer that between you and Jesus, or you can say it out loud and we can all join.
It's great.
It's been a really, really good practice to do corporately.
Yeah. And I think that's the hope for a lot of churches is just, how do we once again, like a family unit, like we have a phrase like us Gokies, and it's a set of values, and those are centralizing values that we as a family kind of affirm and live out. I've got 24, 22, and 14, so they're all in different stages of life. But that's kind of a centralizing thing for our family, and a part of that is going like, okay, this is how we do family, but then this is, as we go out into the world, the hope is that we then, as a result of a healthy family, then kind of live that health out in the spaces and places that we're called to. So,
that's one of my favorite things about you, the intentional collectivist.
Yeah.
We can nerd out a little bit on collectivism, and which is just that idea of, hey, what makes me me is what ties me to you.
Well, and that's body with many parts. That's Paul to a T of trying to go, you've got a church that's spread out. It started in Judea, or it started in Jerusalem. Now it's spreading to Judea into the ends of the earth. Well, how do we make sure? And then there's all these divisions that are happening. How do we kind of bond ourselves under the person of Jesus Christ's death and resurrection? So he keeps coming back and going like, each of you matter. Yeah. All your gifts matter. What you bring to the table matters. There's actually a structure and a system in which, the local church operates. There's an authority structure, but a part of that isn't this oppressive thing. It's this thing that's helping us move forward together because we want to live out Jesus's high priestly prayer that we become one, that people will come to know Jesus. He sees that as a central way in which the gospel moves in Jerusalem, Judea, to the end of the earth. Yeah. But it's most reflected in a local church. Yeah. So if we're doing this well, this then gets multiplied out across the world, you know? And so that's and I also think it's the thing that's greatest threat at a local church level and on a staff is that within the congregation, within the staff, there's this division. And that division then separates, which this has kind of been a part of a period of church history where we're seeing a lot of that happen. So I think there's really cool when there's movements where we go, actually, we need to figure out how to love one another, care for one another, see one another, because it's long-term, this is not going to probably go super well.
Yeah. Well, because we've been talking a lot about this kind of stuff, and I was talking with someone lately on staff and we were kind of remembering in that kind of like 2000s-ish, even mid last decade, that real drive for churches to businessify and corporatize-ish, and he was, I had forgotten this, but we had a big pastor of a mega church in the valley who we respect and who's a good guy who loves Jesus and did shepherd a healthy church at some point, but he came in and was kind of consulting and peeking behind the scenes for us at some point in time and said, more or less, you guys are too much of a family.
Yeah.
You need to be more of a business, which to some extent, to be honest, there is an element of truth in that where we were like, the way we were saying it often is like we were kind of, we were in growing pains. We
Sure.
were still running things the way we did as a church, half the size that we were at the time. But man, I think about that now, and just that verbiage with, I know it was a good heart, just makes me want to puke
Yeah.
a little bit. Like the church does have function. We do need to organize. We do need to have administration. But really, what would be much better to say was, it's good that you're a family. Keep being a family. Be more of a family. You need better organizational tools to administrate the size of this family.
Well, in a lot of it's interesting even thinking in the context of Acts, because a lot of churches are like, let's go back to Acts.
Yeah.
And they forget it was super messy.
Yeah. It's very clearly
like
messy.
Within what I think next week, like,
Yep.
you know, somebody dies.
Oh, I skipped that part.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
I'm skipping that one.
Yeah, you are?
But, well, just 2 chapters, 5 or 6 stories.
Yeah,
I got to pick a couple. But,
oh, yeah.
But the division with the Hellenists and the Hebrews neglecting the widows, there's racial tension in there.
Man.
They're like, how do we even administrate
Paul's
this?
Come back.
Yeah.
It's like, so I just think sometimes we idealize Acts 2 and Acts 4 specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is we forget they were 8,000 strong. We're billions now.
Yep.
And, but I think keeping true to those core values of going like, how do we hold all things in common?
Yeah.
How do we submit to the apostle, to the teachings? And how do we, obviously I'm big on, communion, how do we continue to unify?
I don't think it's that obvious. Jeff's the guy, when David was out of the country and me and Ryan and Jeff were meeting every week, Jeff was pushing for, can we do communion every single week? Why do we do it every other week? Jesus said every time you gather together.
Yeah.
Obvious to me, maybe not obvious to everybody.
But I think a part of that is just this desire of, it's this thing that, which I think it's one of the things this week that I said, as we were doing the Great Commission every time we're having that reading together, is the Great Commission is stable ground. It's this thing that we can unify. We can have lots of opinions around lots of different things, but we can unify around the Great Commission.
Yeah.
As this thing that Jesus is saying, hey, listen, if you're a believer in me, you follow me, you're a person of the way. This is kind of what we're all doing together. We're all going together, and here's what going together looks like. And so I do think, the Nicene Creed was another one. The creeds were this thing of, and Paul's trying desperately to do things that are unifying. We preach Christ crucified, but to the Greeks, it's foolishness. Yeah. But this is what we do. This is what we look like.
Yeah.
So I think communion is one of those things of going like, this separates us from all the rest, and as does, living out the Great Commission and some of the other baptism and different things like this that Jesus
boundary marker, like we talked about when we did the Credo series.
Yeah. And I think what's so fun about Acts is going, this is how we started.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like. But I think we idealize it as opposed to going, he's doing a new thing within each generation that the local church is trying. Like right now, what we're experiencing, I can't believe I get to be a part of this section of church history. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
It's so exciting. And he's doing something really unique right now in this season of church history, as he was in the book of Acts.
Yeah.
So let's see what that looks like. Let's learn from them, but then let's also contextualize it and enjoy what it is he's doing right now.
Yeah.
So I think there's this obsession of like going back. I always say, like, if I did that in my marriage, if I was like, why don't we look like we looked like when we were in year 1 in marriage?
Yeah.
Well, we've been married for 26 years now.
Yeah.
And we've gone through a lot and grown a lot. So if I'm always obsessing about year 1 and the feels that we had back then and trying to bring all that romance back, some of that was really great. But then we've matured and grown and we've learned, and there's been a lot of experience. To some degree, that's going to shut you down to some degree, as opposed to going, we've learned a lot over 2,000 years. And we're still learning about how we got started and what that looked like and what they committed to. And we're like, oh, yeah, that's right. Even this week coming back and saying, a unifying thing, evangelism is unifying, was one of my last point. But a unifying thing is that we do look around at our church, Living Streams, and we go, the needs in this room, they matter. They should matter to all of us.
Yeah.
And I should be saying, hey, I need help. And our church should be at a place that goes, I want to help.
Yeah.
What does it mean to hold all things, together? What does it look like for us to bring to the elders, to, this church offering to go, like, how do we, I've been so encouraged to see our church step up financially to care for this place of worship, that this is an Ebenezer in Phoenix. And to see generously how our church responds to how do we help create this place, continue to help this place. Well, that's generosity. That's bringing to the table and going, I want to help with that. I want to make that better. That's when we're living in union with one another. That's us being cared with one another. That's a beautiful thing.
I remember I was thinking, I think I said this maybe for communion or, no, maybe I did a message on tithing. I don't know, sometime in the last year or two. But I remember, I was... a couple of years ago when the war in Ukraine broke out, we were working with this pastor, Ivan. His daughter was going here to Living Streams, and he's a pastor in kind of the central part of eastern Ukraine. So kind of like a sea of, if the conflict zone was in the shape of a sea, his church was right in the middle there. And I was struck by how powerful it was. I remember doing some Telegram, video chats with him, right? And he's walking me around and showing me what they're doing, showing me their church basement full of people. I remember we got connected with one of our other missionaries in Romania to get them a generator and to get them some gas-powered heaters and stuff for the winter. And all these people, they're flocking here. They're taking literal refuge in his sanctuary. They're sleeping on the floor in the sanctuary, sleeping in the basement, ducking under bombs, and finding physical needs and spiritual needs being met in the midst of this. And I just remember thinking, that little congregation for all these years taking care of their building. You know what I mean? Like taking care of their building that they call a sanctuary. And then here's this moment when it's a sanctuary in every sense of the word. And that little mate, probably one old guy was the maintenance guy. You know what I mean? Making sure the roof wasn't leaking, making sure that this wasn't busted, keeping it going with a shoestring budget all these years. And here it's literally saving lives. And then people in this space are getting pastored and coming to Jesus as they're on their way to safety. And I just thought, man, like here we are too. You and I in a basement right now. It's no big deal right now. Right now it's a podcast studio, but hopefully not. But there may someday be a day when this place is offering literal physical refuge for people and they're hearing about Jesus in the process. It's an important thing for the church to be strong in a physical and a spiritual sense, that it might be a place of refuge. All that to say, we're well off of
Was it the blood of the martyrs
though.
is the seed of the church, and so I think a part of the great beauty of the local church is when we both, in times of affluence or influence, we steward that well, but in times of suffering, we steward that. I think there's a real beauty in the consistency of the local church. It's when I used this illustration at a church a couple weeks ago, is if we are the light, we are the light of the world. Jesus says, you are the light of the world. If you're lost in the woods, what you don't need is a strobe light. You need a spotlight.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times Christians or the church are like a strobe light to a generation or a culture that's looking for the light, which is reflecting, like, that's who he is. He is the light. And so we are distracting, though, because we're like in and out, and we can't make up our minds, and we argue, and we're all about love, and yet we're not, and then we bash each other on. Like, it's really disorienting. Like, that's a strobe light. If you're trying to find your way home, a strobe light's not super helpful. You're going to be sick. It's going to be really disorienting. What you need is a spotlight. And what is a spotlight? Spotlight's very consistent. And it's guiding you, and that's what we're to be in this world. That's what the local church is to be. And so all that to say is, when we are consistent, it brings comfort. when we are inconsistent and we get swayed by the culture or swayed by this thing or that thing, or, that's why I think in COVID, I think one of the lessons we all learned is like, ooh, we are easily distracted and we easily get pulled. And I think what the world is going like, we're looking for you to be a comfort, a consistent place.
Yeah.
So I actually think in this particular period of church history, they're longing for us to be consistent with who we've always been.
Yeah.
To be that spotlight, to go. And I think as you look at Acts, what is happening is that transition of Jesus going, I did what the Father, all power and authority was given to me, and I did what he asked me to do. I died. I laid down my life, and I did what he asked me to do. And you're up.
Yeah.
And that's the invitation of both him ascending into heaven and then handing the proverbial baton over to the disciples and going, you can't, and I'll never leave you, and I'm not alone. It sends the Spirit of God. And now we have this movement.
Yeah.
And that same moment is as true 2,000 years ago as it is today.
Yeah.
I just think sometimes we forget, like, that wasn't like some Pentecost thing.
Yeah.
That's like heaven on earth.
Yeah.
Praying that this is a real, very real thing right now that we need to be committed to. So again, we look to the example of the early church and wow, so amazing. That same reality is as true today as it was back then. That was a move of the Spirit then. What is the move of the Spirit that he wants to do right now? He is as concerned about today as he was in Acts 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, which is a good segue, even though we're like halfway through the podcast now. You want to? We just had some fun things to talk about, though. You and me, it's no difficulty chatting about stuff. But could you give us a quick run over of your message on Sunday? We can dig into that a little bit, kind of cover anything that didn't make the message and all that. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing I was trying. It's really hard to summarize. Chapter 3 and 4. There's so much going on and so much awesome. So it's really hard to summarize 2 chapters. And so I was really trying to go, what are the consistent themes? And then David's really been saying, I really want our church to really start experiencing like evangelism and reaching out. Like that was a real heart that you guys came up with on the teaching team. And so I wanted to honor that. And so I'm trying to go like, what is happening in this particular, the Acts reads like, and then this happened, and then this happened. Has this like, it's almost like this building, and the through line is the Spirit of God is moving and doing something and helping. And I just couldn't get away from the fact that I couldn't get away from Peter. I resonate with Peter a lot. And I was going, how does a man who denied Jesus because of the political system, because of the social repercussions, because of the religious repercussions, how does that guy now heal the lame man, stand before the crowds, proclaim the gospel, unabashedly proclaim the gospel, get dragged in front of the court, unabashedly presents the gospel, is so confident. They're like, hey, we're going to let you go. You got to stop preaching. And he's like, we give an account to God. Like how, and then goes back and they're praying and the walls are in this community. Like, how does that guy? And he was met on the beach by a Jesus who didn't abandon him in his sin, in his denial. But instead, Jesus went like, I see you and I love you and I think you want to do something great with your life. And I think we've lost that. I think a lot of us have lost that. We've forgotten Jesus and what he's done for us. And so I think that's what happens is church then just becomes this religious exercise we go through. And it's no wonder that we kind of like feel purposeless. We go to church out of some guilt or some urge. And so I think what I resonated with in 3 and 4 was Peter. And Peter, this transition and what happened in his life that then he went from this and this. And so, I just tried to pull out like 5 things. I think it was evangelism. Well, I had a statement that was impacted lives impact people. So Peter's life is impacted by the love of Jesus, then commissioned, and then the Spirit of God is helping him then live out that. And as a result of that, others are impacted.
Yeah.
It's almost like you almost see Peter like haphazardly just moving from scene to scene.
Yeah.
And going like, oh, I guess we have to engage this blind or this lame man.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess the congregation I guess these people are all around going like, what happened? And he goes, I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah.
And then he gets pulled away and he's like, oh, here's another mission field. So I was trying to go like, you kind of see like him getting caught up into life. And that's our life. Our life is just a series of events that happened but having a purpose around it, seeing it. So the 5 things I think were evangelism, it sees the need and meets the need. Evangelism is impartial, which means it's not just for the layman. It's not just for the crowd. It's not just for the religious. It's not just for the politicians. It's not just for the community. It's for all of them.
Yeah.
Like all of life is now all for Jesus. Like it's every part of him. It's completely impartial. Evangelism is unashamed. It's not afraid anymore. Like, so all of a sudden something changed in him. It's unashamed. Evangelism is unifying. It's central. It centralizes us. So I think as I was walking through those, I was going, these are the things like, for me, evangelism, because I grew up a certain way, has this like, I just go up to people and I go, you want to go to heaven? You want to go to hell? Pick the blue pill or pick the red pill. You choose.
Yeah.
And I think what I sense just in that is it's just so much bigger.
Yeah.
It's just it's this whole life invitation. So I have these terms like suburban, and it's something I've used here before, but be a suburban missionary.
Yeah.
Like mission work isn't something that happens over there.
Yeah.
It's something that happens right here. So I don't know. That's a lot, but I mean, a part of it was me trying to figure out like, how do you summarize what's going on and how, and I'm probably somebody who's a lot more practical. Like if I'm a parishioner, how do I do this? It's great. The word of God is great. What do I do with this?
Yeah.
How do I actually take this and apply this in my life? So I think that's something I genuinely am always a little bit like, how do we do? Because I'm asking that question.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the? I mean, I think what you're describing is like, oh, it's kind of how I feel about like the word evangelism, like those mixed feelings, right? That I think tend to lead to, I think multiple mixed feelings about evangelism tend to lead to the results that we don't evangelize, right? I'm curious what your thoughts are on like, why do we have some of those mixed feelings? Like what are those mixed feelings as you look at yourself, as you look at other people, and where do you think they're coming from?
I told a story about how I, went up to a guy who was smoking a cigarette at a Dairy Queen and said, "You're going to hell." And as a kid, I really thought I was doing a good thing. Yeah. But that was a part of like, I grew up in the 80s where it was like, Jesus is coming back and you will be held accountable for the blood. The blood will be on your hands for not telling people about Jesus. And so what happened for me during that period of time, and I've done mission trips and it was going in and, part of that, I really did just want to honor the Lord, but people for me I became impatient with I felt like good as long as I told you about Jesus, and then I took off. But Jean Vanier has this in this book, Becoming Human, has this line about, but if you have to sit with Lazarus, he's talking about Lazarus in the Gospel of Luke. If you have to sit with Lazarus, Lazarus starts to expose you because he wants more than your words. He wants your life. And I think that's where it's like that. What in Corinthians where it's like, or Colossians, like word and deed. It's the both. So I think I grew up where it was all words, very little deed. It was just like, I did my job and I did that. So that's one end of it. Then the other pendulum goes, and then I was brought up through Moody in a more reformed way of thinking things about like, well, there's the election then. So this is a little more theological, but that there's the elect. And if you're the elect, then and I believe in the sovereignty of God, then I just go, it's up to him.
Yeah.
He'll make it happen. And then J.I. Packer wrote a book called Evangelism and the Sovereignty of God, which really was a helpful book for me. And he uses this word, and it's antinomy. And antinomy is they're not evangelism and the sovereignty of God aren't two opposing thoughts. They're two parallel lines that are working together. Yes, God is sovereign, and he knows. And yes, we have the responsibility to evangelize. And I think evangelism is a unique gifting that everyone's supposed to do, but the Lord has wired us a different way.
Yeah.
Everybody a different way. You know, like somebody like David, who I love, David's gonna, I mean, I've been with him. Like we've been on hikes, and David like walks up to a dude and he just starts sharing the gospel.
Yeah.
I love that about David. I'm not necessarily wired that way. I'm probably a guy who's like, hey, tell me your name, kind of take you for a cup of coffee. And then over 3 or 4 years, I get to know that guy. And, you know, I'm not saying David doesn't do that, but I've watched him and I admire that in him. But I also go, that's a really beautiful gift that God has given to him. So I think what happens within evangelism, guilt drives us as opposed to, I think, what is the Spirit of God inviting me to do? And am I willing to obey him? In that. And sometimes I just sense the Lord going like, just walk patiently with them. You know, most of our stories, our family stories of seeing people come to know Jesus have been 3, 4, 5, 7, 9-year journeys with them. And that's beautiful. And I love the stories where people walk up to people boldly and, you know, but I think for me, it's like, what does he tell me to do? Am I willing to do that? Yeah. You know,
I think what you're saying right there is actually a point I'm hitting on. I'm preaching next week on 5 and 6. Because you know when the apostles and they're arrested and then released and then they say, hey, we told you not. We told you shut up, stop sharing the gospel. They said, well, we got to obey God, not man. And so I think spoiler alert for Sunday, but I think
and that starts in 4.
Yeah,
it starts in chapter 4 where they're going like, hey, stop talking about it. And they're like, well.
And they're really trying to drive that home. And so what, that dichotomy is, what are we going to operate under the fear of man or out of obedience to God? And so I think, you know, when we're talking about evangelism, like there is that general Great Commission obedience, but then there's this specific layer a little bit, as I think what you're hitting on too is like, well, what is God telling me to do right now in regards to this? Like, is God telling me to share with someone or not share with someone? And I've been thinking about it a little bit, like, you know, I got a 2.5-year-old, and so I think a lot about obedience these days, and particularly disobedience, you know. And there are very clearly 2 categories of disobedience, at least for a 2.5-year-old, but I think probably in general. There's rebellion, and then there's ignoring. You know, so sometimes I tell my son, hey, would you do this? And he says, no, you know, and runs the other way. And lately, more often than not, he just keeps doing what he's doing. I don't hear you. And I say, hey, buddy, Dad's asking you to do something. I'm playing with my vrooms, you know, like, and he just, to the point where we've had to start, okay, well, you're going to go to the corner. Like you did nothing and you're going to the corner because you did nothing. And to be honest, as a dad, you know what hurts me a lot worse is the second one, right? When he says, no, I'm getting out of here, go away. Like, oh, there's a little sting there, but you're engaging with me. But when you ignore me and just pretend I'm not there, oof.
There was this quote, I don't know if I brought it up. I had it in my notes, but it says the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And I think the sin of indifference is we've forgotten who we are. And I think that's Peter's, like the transition of Peter is he knows what Jesus has done for him. And he knows what Jesus has invited him into. And it creates this lens, this way in which to see the world. And so he can't be indifferent to the lame man. You know, he can't be indifferent to the people that are showing up now and going like, what just happened? He can't be indifferent. He's looking at everything as going, oh, this is an opportunity to, and I think what's happened is and I think what our culture is craving is for Christians to be Christians. Like, don't make apologies about it. I mean, in the sense of going like, I can go, hey, Are we hypocritical? 100%.
Yeah.
And I can own that. But I'm not apologetic in that I love Jesus and I follow after him. Are there instances in church history that I'm really disappointed in? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Could we have done a lot of that better? 100%. And God have grace and mercy on us in that way. But unapologetically, and I think that feels like a spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
The strobe light feels like, oh, we in, we out, we in, we
Yeah.
out, we in. I'm only in on this part, and I'm not in on this part. And they're like, well, I don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there's indifference in that because it's not like we're a little wishy-washy.
Yeah.
You know, and I think what we're seeing within Acts is just a real clear, this is who we are.
Yeah.
This is how we act. This is what we do. And I think the challenge and the encouragement to us is, you know, it's just, I think David said it last week or 2 weeks ago, like, it's a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's holding a mirror up and going, where are you actually in this, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think I've noticed over the course of my life a very strong correlation to whether or not I'm looking for or asking for opportunities to share the Lord and those being presented to me.
Yeah.
You know, and I think for us, you know, back to the, you know, rebellion versus ignoring, I think most of us, it's not active. It's most of us most of the time are not actively rebelling against the Lord in regards to evangelism. I have certainly had instances where that has been the case.
Yeah.
Where I've heard the Lord saying, "Go tell this guy,"
and you don't do it.
And I'm like, no,
yeah.
you know, like. I remember a couple of years ago in a sermon, I shared a story of a guy being cold, and I had my pizza, and I felt like the Lord told me to share it with him, and I just drove away.
Yeah.
And people like gasped when I shared that. I'm like, yeah, I'm a pastor, but I didn't want to give the guy my pizza. You know, like it was cold. I wanted to get home.
Until they evaluate their own life, like, I kind of do.
And I'm like, I do that too. But I think they were really just expecting me to be, you know, so proud of how I gave the guy my pizza or something. I'm like, no, the pizza tastes good. But you know, like I've had moments like that. But most of the time, I just got my head down. Most of the time, I'm just not paying attention. Most of the time, I don't even know if the Lord is saying something and I'm ignoring it. I think what is happening is I'm not asking him for it.
But that's the Good Samaritan.
Mm-hmm.
The Good Samaritan is, you've got people who are good people.
Yeah.
And they're going to do good things.
Yeah.
But they miss, that's the indifference.
Yep.
They miss the law, and the fulfillment of the law is in this person who is needy. It's that I can't see him because I'm on the way to go do something that I believe is more important than that person that God has placed in my path. And I'm with you. I feel like if the Lord told me to do something, one of the beautiful things I think within the Great Commission and Jesus ascending into heaven is him going, I trust you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to think about. But how often I'm just so distracted. Yeah. And am I waking up each morning going like, wait, I've only been given today. I recently heard a quote, and it's just been on my mind a lot, and it just says, live in the grace of one day. Mm-hmm. And I think it's about simplifying my life, and then going, okay, what is the thing that's most true about today?
Yeah.
I'm loved. I'm beloved. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I have a responsibility to care for church pastors and staff. That's my job, my profession. But then I also have this beautiful commission to invite people into this beautiful journey and love that Jesus has shown me, and then not to abandon them to the side, but to walk with them. And that's the idea of, baptizing them and teaching them, and I just go, it's too complicated to think it too big. Yeah. But if I can simplify it and just live in the grace of one day, that then refocuses. And I got to say, I wish I was better at simplifying in that way. Yeah. I think that's what you're talking about. Like waking up and going, today actually matters. Yeah. Like in my life, actually matters. And why does it matter? And just simplifying, it's like Are there wars out there? 100%. Are there hurting people everywhere? 100%.
Yeah.
Is there political stuff all over the place? 100%.
Yeah.
How that is determined in the future, we have no idea.
Yeah.
Nor have you been granted or given the breath for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
But I have been given the grace for this moment that I'm in, and how do I hold that responsible, as well as every moment that this moment right here where we're sharing with one another.
Yeah.
And there's a simplicity in that. And I just think the indifference happens as a result of the distraction of life and busyness, and
Yeah.
So
When
anyway.
I wonder, like, what are the odds that in the course of an average week, you are, within arm's reach of someone whose heart is ready for an interaction that will nudge them to Jesus?
Totally.
I would say pretty dang high.
Oh, I would agree.
Unless you're, at a silent retreat this week, or really enjoying Netflix 7 days out of the
Well,
week.
and if he loves me and wants to use me, then I go, oh, I matter.
Yeah. And I think in my experience, it essentially, if I say, God, would you show me those opportunities? They're there. If I don't, he's usually, every once in a while he is, but he's usually not saying, hey, that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy. And sometimes they're those long relationships, and here's a moment here.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're that drive-by gospeling.
Yeah.
And when I think about some of those barriers, right? Why are we resistant to sharing the gospel? You were touching on this a little bit earlier. I think one of the things is we're afraid of offending someone as we present the gospel. And again, this is something I'm thinking about a little bit for this upcoming Sunday. But I don't think, perhaps we have a little bit of problem with the gospel offending someone, but I think we have a bigger problem with the perception that we are the ones offending, right? So if you're offended by the fact that the God of the universe loves you, has pursued you, and has done everything imaginable short of forcing himself on you to restore you to him, I don't know, that's a pretty beautiful story. But if you're offended because I'm making the good news sound like bad news, that's kind of on me.
Yeah.
But I think we've overcomplicated that a little bit, because it's not hard to not be a jerk.
Well, and that was the part I was going, in chapter 4, I think it's verse 2, it literally says that they were annoyed. And I was like, but it is a kind of annoying. And I mean, it can be annoying. And the reason why it's annoying is because it's mysterious, right? Like, they have no explanation for how this lame man got healed. They have no explanation for why 5,000 people have, or 8,000 at this point, but 5,000 in this part of the narrative, have now come to faith as a result of a proclamation that's pretty much like, he was here, he loved you, he was among you, he's a fulfillment of the prophets, and you killed him. And they're annoyed by the fact that it's working. Yeah. And I just go like, but what I think for me, what I have found is it's when one of the statements I made, and I had a few people come up afterwards and say, talk to me about this. And I was happy because, and it wasn't in my notes originally, and I had just thought about it, is if we got better at talking about the log in our own eye in order to talk about the speck in their eye, it's using the failure to be able to go, but I'm the chief of all sinners. Yeah. And let me tell you about this grace and mercy. But as I was taught kind of evangelism in some way, it was like it was a finger in the chest. Yeah.
Which isn't testimony. It's I don't know, at best
judgment.
Observation, assessment, at worst condemnation. My testimony is what I have seen the Lord do. Yeah. It's not just the story of the day I prayed a prayer and gave my life to Jesus. It's all the stuff I've seen him do. Yeah. I'm testifying. This is his character. Yeah, it's very different from...
But that's where I'm going. If we can be okay with the log in our own eye, it will allow us the opportunity to address the speck in others. But it's when we don't, when we're addressing the speck without, this is, I think, culturally where evangelism, it's hard because we've been running after the speck and not dealing with the log in our own eye. And we've been in a period of time now where we've been exposed as a church.
Yeah.
And so now it's coming back and go, yes, that's true. And let me tell you my story. And then people go, well, I've got something too. And we go, I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And we're not afraid anymore.
Yeah.
I can talk about my failures because I get to talk grace and mercy. But I think we've been so afraid to talk about our failures, to talk about how we made mistakes.
Yeah.
When in reality, that is what Peter's doing.
Yeah.
That is what Paul, I'm the chief of all sinners. I murdered people.
Yeah.
And his grace and mercy met me on the road to Damascus. And now I'm proclaiming across the world what he's done in my life.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
A few years back, I was at a conference where I heard John Tyson talking about a little bit about evangelism. And one of the things that he said...
And he's a pastor in New York, which is really interesting.
Yeah. And it was at Bridgetown.
Okay.
So in Portland. So from New York to Portland, you know.
Yeah.
And he was sharing something, a framework that was so useful of a way to think about that actually helped me with that younger Jeff telling the guy smoking the cigarette, you're going to hell a little bit. Helped me have a little bit of grace for that version of myself and ourselves in the church, you know. And I think he was summarizing, I think it was maybe from Charles Taylor, which is a man who absolutely needs summary. But he was talking about these different phases of basically of a culture as it approaches or walks away from the gospel and walks away from truth. And that early phase, I don't remember what he called it, but that phase one would be where the culture is primarily suppressing the truth, but it knows the truth, right? And so you could think, the 1920s, 1950s, kind of, early last century, where generally speaking, everybody kind of knows that there's a God, everybody knows there's a hell, everybody knows that God loves you, and can save you. But then there's this tide of like, let's just ignore that, And so, think of a 1950s bar is full of people who know that what they're doing is sinful, but they're shoving it, And so when you are in the 1950s and you walk into a bar and you say you're all going to hell, everybody says, you're right. And they go out, they leave, they go to church and they get baptized.
Well, I was thinking like Tozer would say like, we bring them to the banquet table of God and we starve them. Like that resonated during, it resonates now.
Because it was known and understood and agreed upon. And so that kind of fire and brimstone is actually compassionate.
Yeah, even Jonathan Edwards, sinners in the hand of an angry God. The wrath of God's and
I can look to individuals in my life who I know, who I love, who have never walked away from Jesus, but who stopped following him. You know what I mean? And I've had interactions, maybe a little more gentle than that, but with them where really all that's needed is someone to remind them like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like you're walking away from Jesus and you know it. It's like, you're right, I'm coming home.
Yeah.
And so in that culture, and sometimes that's individuals, sometimes that's entire cultures, sometimes that's subcultures, in that moment, that kind of convicting evangelism is powerful and good and necessary and has led entire generations back to the Lord. But you keep going, and then the next phase, we're contesting the truth. We're arguing the truth. So now maybe that's, again, maybe another dynamic of kind of the 50s of like the Scopes trial, oh, we have another truth claim. We're saying, no, the gospel doesn't make sense. It's not legitimate. It's not real. It's not true. And now that doesn't really work because you walk into the bar and you say you're all going to hell, and somebody says, are we?
Yeah.
And so that doesn't really work. But then we are currently in a phase that has progressed even past
What's interesting, like the amount of people that like The Case for Christ and like Ravi Zacharias and a lot of these types of books coming out.
That's the apologetics. That's what you do there is you then argue with them. And you say, let me tell you that the Bible is true, that it is right. And actually you would tie these to the transcendentals. The true, the good, the true, the good, and the beautiful, right? And so where we're at now that we progressed past that, right? Largely speaking in the West, right? Not, and I don't mean progressed. I should say we've regressed past that. And so now we're at a point where it's no longer let me contest the truth. It's you do you. It's your truth is your truth.
Yeah.
You know, it's coexist. It's whatever. And so the way he was saying it is there are no preferred narratives. There are no supreme narratives. There are no preference narratives, right? So really, they're all just kind of floating there. But what that means is you can have your thing, and I can have my thing, and everything's fine. And there really isn't true. And we're not really thinking about truth. We're not really caring about truth. We're not really thinking about what's good. We don't really care about what's good. But you know what we do love over here? We love beauty. We love art. We're living life for what is delightful, for what is delicious, for what is attractive, for what is beautiful. And you know what you can't argue with? The beauty of the gospel.
Yeah.
There's nothing to argue with. So
yeah, and even if you watch, even culturally right now, if you watch Rogan and Andrew Zimmern and Theo Vaughn, I mean, these are some of the top podcasters.
Yep.
All of them are bringing on, well, all of them have brought on, I forget his name.
Wes Huff.
Wes Huff.
Yeah.
They brought, because there's a curiosity. And he is unapologetically going, I'm a believer. This is what it looks like. And they're picking his brain.
And he's doing a good job going back to that phase too.
Yes.
But you know what's bringing them in? Is, and he hasn't gotten there yet, but it's Jordan Peterson saying this stuff is beautiful.
Yeah.
And this stuff works. And so he's actually following that exact train, right? So you go back to that phase one and it's like, hey, this stuff is true. Sorry, this stuff is good. Then phase two, this stuff is true. You know, let me argue with you, Ravi Zacharias, whatever, you know, all those guys. You know, sad name to mention.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but
but that's a part of us owning our stuff.
And then we say this is good, this is true, this is beautiful. But now we go, or maybe this is true, this is good, this is beautiful. Now we go the inverse at this moment in time, and we say, look, let me just tell you how beautiful this is.
Yeah.
And by the way, this thing that's beautiful, it's good. Like it actually, your life will be better. It's more functional than any other way of living. Interesting that this beautiful and functionally good thing, by the way, happens to be true with a capital T. And so really it's when you're coming up to someone and telling them you're going to hell these days, what you're doing is you're just being tone deaf. You're just missing the moment. You know, if you could go back 20 years, maybe there's heart issues like you were sharing for sure, you know, like, but I think we could go back to, you know, early last century. There might not have been as many heart issues as there would be for someone who's doing that today. Yeah. Because you're just saying, I don't care whether this works or not. Like you said, I just want to get my punch card, my evangelism punch card in. But what I care about is, do people come to Jesus? Yeah. And guess what? The gospel is as beautiful as it is good and is as beautiful as it is true. And so it does not matter which transcendental we start with. It does not matter if we start with true or good or beautiful, as long as we check all the three boxes and make sure people know it's beautiful, true, and good. And so,
well, and then I think a part of that is, and do I believe those within my, you know, I think a personal responsibility, because I think what happens so often within the church is we relegate. The church needs to figure this out, as opposed to personalizing that in my own life, which gets back to the very point I'm trying to make in 3 and 4, which is Peter finally comes to understand the beauty of the gospel that Jesus has been saying the whole time he was with him. He just couldn't see it. But now, having experienced the grace and the mercy, and then being commissioned in and going, hey, remember that rock thing, that identity thing where I talked to you about? Remember we changed your name? This is what it was about. Yeah. You know? And we never, you know, the Lord never holds that over. Jesus never holds that over Peter. He never goes, I gave you this great calling. I've made you this great guy. And you keep, you know, saying I don't want to wash my feet. You sink in the ocean after walking. I mean, just like you fall asleep when, you know, he doesn't condemn him. Yeah. He just faithfully walks with him. Peter finally realizes Jesus is who he says he is, the beauty of the gospel. Yeah. Jesus forgives him, restores him, commissions him, and Peter goes, yeah, I'll die for that. Yeah. And then we have to then go, oh, do I feel that? Or am I just in this stream where I just do this thing because I've always done it? Yeah. I just come to church because that's what you do, you know? But have I been transformed by the renewing of my mind. Have I been transformed by the good news of Jesus Christ? Because if I have, then I'll look like Peter. I'll look like Jesus, but I'll look like Peter. And Peter makes mistakes. If you go through the book of Acts, he makes some significant mistakes.
Sure does.
But he once again reminds himself, wait, I can go back to that well of grace and mercy, that met me on that beach and then reminded me, hey, no one's too far gone.
Yeah.
Even the person who said they would never deny and then denies at the worst moment.
Yeah.
And then he receives that grace and mercy. Jesus commissions them to continue to live into what he's called him to do the whole time. And I think that same thing is true for us. And I think that's the part within what you're walking through is going, yes, for the church, but also individually.
Yeah.
What does that mean for me?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for hanging with us. It's always so much fun, man. I wish we could just hang forever and do this. If only, well, I guess I do get paid to do this a little bit. So if only you could get paid to sit here and talk with me too. But it's always a delight, Jeff. It's always a pleasure having you on Sunday mornings and afterwards at the podcast.
It was an honor to teach this week.
Yeah. Thanks so much for serving our family in that way. And if you're still hanging with us, thanks so much for being here. We really are hoping that Living Streams is going to mature in evangelism over the next year, and we're going to really start taking in that harvest. So I just encourage you, maybe spend some time this week asking the Lord for opportunities, but be careful because he'll probably do it. And you'll be faced with an opportunity to share the gospel. And our hope is that you would be obedient to the Lord in that, and that we would see some people kind of nudging towards the Lord and maybe see some waves of people coming to him. So thanks so much for that, and we will see you on Sunday.